Which parts of the United States get so brutally cold that you start replaying every head injury and questionable life choice that convinced you heading north was a good idea? This isn't about a light dusting of snow or a couple of cozy winter mornings. What follows is a countdown of the coldest states in America, judged by average winter temperatures, all-time record lows, and the alarming frequency with which your car simply refuses to turn over, purely out of spite. If you've ever gone down an internet rabbit hole searching for phrases like coldest states to live in, states with the most punishing winters, worst winter weather in the U.S., or even why do people live here when it's winter, then congratulations, you're exactly who this is for. We're counting these states down from 10 to 1, with the top spot claiming the most consistently frigid winters in the country. Along the way, we'll get into frozen eyelashes, wind chill numbers that feel legally questionable, and regions where locals will shrug and say things like, "It's not even cold, it's just January." So grab a blanket, let your car idle for a solid 20 minutes, and brace yourself for the states where winter doesn't just show up. It settles in, changes the locks, and refuses to leave until April. Let's get into it. Number 10, New Hampshire. Winters in the Granite State don't kick down the door. They slip in unnoticed, sink deep into your bones, and stubbornly stick around until April. Even then, spring likes to tease you for about a week before vanishing again for another 3. The White Mountains turn everything up a notch. The wind bites harder, the snow hits heavier, the ice feels more personal, and there's a constant background hum of, "How did I end up here?" What really makes New Hampshire cold isn't just the thermometer, it's the accuracy. Snow doesn't drift down politely. It comes at you sideways like it has a mission. Roads don't merely get slick, they become full-on trust exercises between you, your tires, and physics. The cold itself feels very New England, quiet, efficient, and faintly disapproving. A local once told me he couldn't tell his truck battery was dead because, in February, it always sounds like that. He shoveled the driveway, cleared snow off the roof, salted the steps, turned the key, and when the engine didn't even try, he just nodded, like the truck had made a valid point, and went back inside. For 2 weeks. As for the numbers, the average winter temperature hovers around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, or about minus 6.7 degrees Celsius. January lows typically fall somewhere between minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit and 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And the coldest temperature ever recorded in New Hampshire? A jaw-dropping minus 47 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the kind of cold where plans simply stop existing. If you're already inside a grocery store, congratulations. You live there now, at least for a while. Number 9, Idaho. Idaho's winter issue isn't just cold, it's inconsistency. One part of the state is tolerable enough that you think, okay, I can survive this. Then you drive a little farther and suddenly feel like you've wandered into a long-term study on how much cold a human body can endure. Elevation plays a huge role here, and the higher and more remote you go, the colder and quieter things get, especially the kind of quiet that reminds you help is not nearby. A lot of people don't realize this, but Idaho is largely made up of the Rocky Mountains. And yes, the Rockies don't just belong to Colorado. That range starts way down in New Mexico, cuts through Colorado and Wyoming, covers about half of Idaho, stretches into British Columbia, and keeps going until it runs out of land in the Yukon. Idaho just happens to sit right in the middle of that frozen spine. What's different about winter here is that it doesn't really stop life. It rewrites the rules. Roads stay open, schools stay open, people still go to work. Everything just moves slower, feels heavier, and requires at least 3 layers of flannel plus a vague sense of regret. I made a video like this years ago, and one Idaho resident summed up winter driving perfectly. He said you just follow the tire tracks ahead of you and hope they belong to someone who knows where they're going. Then he added, "That's not land navigation, that's faith-based transportation." Still one of the best descriptions I've heard. Now, the temperatures here vary a lot depending on where you are, but we're talking specifically about the mountainous regions. In Idaho's Rocky Mountain areas, average winter temperatures fall between 10 degrees Fahrenheit and 22 degrees Fahrenheit. And the coldest temperature ever recorded in the state? A staggering minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit at Island Park Dam. That's not just cold, that's reality malfunctioning. Number 8, Wisconsin. Cold in Wisconsin is a shared experience. Everyone endures it together, and everyone collectively agrees to act like it's really not that bad. The lakes freeze into solid ground, the wind has nothing to slow it down, and snowbanks stick around so long they become part of the local geography. Winter doesn't cancel social life here. It just moves everything indoors and dramatically increases soup intake, layered sweaters, and serious cold weather fashion commitments. Wisconsin winters feel endless because, honestly, they almost are. By the time March rolls around, people aren't waiting for spring anymore. They're actively bargaining with the sun. I've technically done winter in Wisconsin 3 times, though done might be generous. Once it was about 2 weeks, another time closer to 3, and that was more than enough for me. Locals were quick to tell me I hadn't even scratched the surface. One comment I remember from years ago summed it up perfectly. It's not cold until your beer freezes while you're walking it in from the garage. That feels like an official measurement. As for the numbers, average winter temperatures usually land between 12 degrees Fahrenheit and 22 degrees Fahrenheit, especially in the north-central parts of the state. The coldest officially recorded temperature was minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit in Sawyer County back in February of 1996. There's also an unofficial reading of minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit from 1977 in Coudray, Wisconsin, also in Sawyer County, which is the kind of number people bring up casually, like it didn't completely defy human comfort. Number 7. Vermont. Vermont looks serene in photographs. Snow-draped villages, silent backroads, mountains tucked neatly under layers of white. Actually living through it, though, is another story entirely. The cold here isn't sharp and flashy. It's damp, relentless, and oddly intimate, like it's targeting you specifically. Winter in Vermont feels longer than most because it shows up early, overstays its welcome, and often leaves with souvenirs. Things like mailboxes, fence lines, and any reliable sense of time. Seriously, try Googling Vermont right now. I'd bet more than half the images you see involve snow on the ground. Not a barren wasteland exactly, but definitely frozen and very committed to winter. Vermont has built a reputation around its cold months, and honestly, it's earned it. Winters here linger, and when they settle in, they don't mess around. One subscriber once commented, "You measure how bad winter is by how long it takes to locate your mailbox. If it disappears entirely, you're having a rough year." That's wild. For perspective, where I live in Oregon, specifically the Portland metro area, knee-high snow would trigger something close to a citywide meltdown. Most winters we're talking an inch or two on the ground, maybe ankle-deep on a truly bad day, and some years we get nothing at all. Losing your mailbox to snowfall? That's another level. As for the stats, Vermont's average winter temperature sits around 22 degrees Fahrenheit, with lows hovering near 2 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest temperature ever recorded in the state was minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit on December 27, 1917. And just for good measure, Vermont matched that exact number again in 1933. Number 6. Montana. Winter in Montana isn't just cold, it's expansive. The chill stretches endlessly across open plains with nothing in its way, nothing to slow it down, and nothing to blunt the impact. The wind doesn't drift in casually. It charges across the land, gaining speed like it's urgently late for something. Trees are few, buildings are far apart, and towns don't feel snug or sheltered. They feel exposed, vulnerable. And everything, including help, feels much farther away than it should. This is where the sheer size of the state really hits you. In January, what should be a quick drive can turn into an hour spent surrounded by white nothingness. Gas stations feel oddly scarce. Cell service becomes more of a hopeful concept than a guarantee. At some point, the scenery stops being beautiful and starts being educational. You quickly learn your limits, how far you can safely travel, how long you can afford to wait, and how much you should have brought with you before you ever left home. A survivalist I once heard, he was actually from Wyoming, made a point that stuck with me. If you live in serious winter country, keep candles and a lighter in your car. If you end up stranded on the roadside with no immediate help, a single candle placed safely on the dashboard can produce enough heat to keep you alive. Just a small flame. Now, if you're driving a beat-up 1972 Ford Econoline with rust holes and zero insulation, that candle isn't performing miracles. But in a modern car, even a small tea light can make the difference between surviving and not. Montana's cold doesn't just freeze things, it isolates them. When something breaks, there's often no quick fix or nearby service call. You either repair it yourself or learn to live without it for a while. If a road shuts down, that's not a mild inconvenience. It's the end of your plans, full stop. Montana winter has no respect for schedules, deadlines, or positive thinking. Over time, the season changes people. It slowly removes urgency and replaces it with patience. You stop rushing. You stop expecting instant solutions. The weather teaches humility, because no matter how prepared or confident you are, you never truly win. The cold always gets the final say, and everyone who lives there already knows it. One local put it perfectly. You don't check the temperature, you check the wind. Because the temperature is already bad news. You knew that before you looked. As for the numbers, Montana's average winter temperature sits right around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, typically in January. And the coldest temperature ever recorded? A brutal minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit at Rogers Pass. That's not winter, that's survival mode. Number 5. Wyoming. Wyoming winters mash altitude, relentless wind, and serious isolation into one long stress test for both people and infrastructure. Snow doesn't settle politely here. It drifts wherever it wants, whenever it wants. Roads shut down without ceremony. Folks start mentally counting how much firewood they have left. And showers? Optional, because the pain of stepping back into freezing air can genuinely outweigh the benefits of being clean. Wyoming's wind is already infamous, but add snow to the mix and suddenly most of the population is privately Googling questions they never thought they'd ask. Like, can a nipple actually freeze off? No need to pause and look it up. I already did that homework for you. The answer is yes. In extreme cold, frostbite can cause tissue damage severe enough to lead to tissue loss. It's been documented through things like misuse of cold therapy, freezing agents, or severe accidental exposure. Moral of the story, protect your nipples. This is not a joke state. Winter in Wyoming feels less like a season and more like nature reminding you who's in charge. You're allowed to exist here, but only if you follow the rules. One Wyoming resident once described a blizzard as the weather turning the lights off for a while. That's not metaphorical, that's just accurate reporting. Temperature-wise, winter averages usually land between 0 degrees Fahrenheit and 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And the coldest temperature ever recorded in Wyoming? A staggering minus 66 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the point where cold stops being uncomfortable and starts becoming instructional. Number 4. Maine. Winter in Maine comes with moisture, and that detail makes everything feel heavier, physically and emotionally. Snow doesn't just pile up, it settles into your mood. Coastal winds slice straight through jackets and insulation like they've got a personal grudge. The cold feels permanent, as if it existed long before you showed up and will still be there long after you've given up and left. A close army buddy of mine, Matt Sear, rest in peace, once described Maine winters as both the best and worst part of his childhood. As a kid, there was something magical about it. But once he grew older and had to work outside in that same cold, the magic vanished fast. Not surprisingly, the moment he had the chance, he moved to Florida and never looked back. Someone from the comments on a previous video summed it up perfectly. If the ocean is still steaming in January, it's a bad winter. When the water starts smoking, you know it's serious. That's a level of cold most people don't even know how to picture. On paper, Maine's average winter temperature sits around 12 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest temperature ever recorded in the state was minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit at the Big Black River on January 16, 2009, during a major Arctic blast. That reading came from a remote station and reflects the actual air temperature, not the wind chill, which, as you can imagine, made it feel significantly worse. Number 3. Minnesota. Minnesota winters have the reputation they do for a reason. Cold snaps don't sneak in. They announce themselves loudly, complete with warnings, prep time, and neighbors checking on each other afterward. These are considerate people. If you were to freeze to death in your house in Los Angeles, your neighbors would mostly be wondering what your property is going to sell for, because that real estate game is ruthless. Minnesota operates differently. When the cold hits here, the temperature doesn't gradually decline. It drops straight through the floor. The air physically hurts to breathe. Your face goes numb in seconds. Eyelashes freeze together like they're staging a labor dispute. Cars don't struggle to start. They simply opt out. In smaller towns especially, it's completely normal to see everyone leave their vehicles running outside the hardware store or grocery store on brutally cold days, just so they don't have to gamble on whether the engine will come back to life. At these temperatures, anything mechanical becomes suspicious at best. Door handles snap, tires lose every argument they have with ice. Phones shut themselves down, not because the battery died, but because the phone decided survival was more important. And yet, life keeps moving. People still go to work. Kids still go to school. Stores still get stocked. Minnesota doesn't close for winter. It adapts. People wake up earlier. They dress smarter. They plan everything in advance. There's no panic, no theatrics, just routine carried out under extreme conditions. One comment I remember summed it up perfectly. Below zero just means the air is spicy. That's not toughness. That's emotional resilience flirting dangerously close to denial. As for the numbers, Minnesota's average winter temperatures range from about -4 degrees Fahrenheit to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest temperature ever recorded was a staggering -60 degrees Fahrenheit, set in Tower, Minnesota, on February 2nd, 1996. That cold snap brought record lows across the state and still stands as the coldest temperature ever recorded east of the Mississippi River. Number 2. North Dakota. If this one surprised you, then you've probably never glanced at a map. North Dakota sits shoulder to shoulder with Minnesota, Montana, and Wyoming, forming a neat little cluster of places you absolutely do not want to be in January. South Dakota is nearby too, and yes, it gets cold there, but not this cold. North Dakota winters operate on a different level entirely. The landscape offers no protection. It's flat, wide open, and completely uninterested in helping you survive. Cold air moves without resistance, picking up speed and confidence as it goes. Wind chills climb into ranges that stop sounding like real numbers and start feeling hypothetical. If you've spent your life somewhere like San Diego, or even in warmer southern states like Mississippi or Florida, this kind of cold will feel unreal. Once the wind chill gets extreme enough, you genuinely start wondering whether every animal outdoors has already died. The thing about North Dakota cold is that it isn't flashy or chaotic. It's stubborn. There are no dramatic surprises, no sudden storms to mark its arrival. It just shows up early, stays late, and refuses to compromise. Days blur together under the same gray skies and frozen ground, to the point where you find yourself almost hoping for a nosebleed just to see a little color. On average, winter temperatures in North Dakota hover between about 2 degrees Fahrenheit and 7 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest temperature ever recorded in the state was an unbelievable -60 degrees Fahrenheit, set in Partial, North Dakota, on February 15, 1936. That same day also delivered a brutal wind chill of -73 degrees Fahrenheit. What makes it even more insane is that this extreme cold occurred in the same year North Dakota recorded its all-time high temperature of 121 degrees Fahrenheit, perfectly illustrating the wild temperature swings of the Great Plains. Before we move on to number 1, a quick note. If you're thinking about moving to any of these frozen places or anywhere else in the U.S., there's a link in the description below that can connect you with a real estate agent nationwide. It's a great resource called Home and Money, definitely worth checking out. Number 1. Alaska. Yes, shocking absolutely no one, Alaska takes the top spot. Our northernmost state gets more than a little cold. There are parts of Alaska where spotting a polar bear wandering through town isn't considered unusual, and if you happen to be outside when that happens, you're already at a disadvantage. Extreme cold slows you down, especially as you get older, and the moment you lock eyes with a polar bear, panic kicks in. Best case scenario, you're diving under someone's Chrysler and reevaluating every decision that led you there. Winter in Alaska isn't really a season. It's a full-blown environment. Cold controls everything: how buildings are designed, how schedules work, and how people stay alive. Darkness stretches on. Silence gets heavier. Everyone's heard the stories about parts of Alaska where the sun barely rises for weeks at a time. In some areas, it's close to 30 days of near darkness, which honestly sounds like the worst one-night stand imaginable. You go home with someone, blink once, and suddenly you've been there a month and barely know their last name. Funny enough, something like that actually happened to a friend of mine. We worked together at Comcast years ago. She met a guy, went home with him, and then one of the biggest snowstorms we'd had in years hit. She ended up stuck at his house with his parents for 4 days. Fast forward to now, they've been married for about 10 years and have a little boy. I've always loved that story, Alaska energy, even when it happens somewhere else. But here's the thing you need to understand about Alaska. Cold is the authority. It tells you how things are going to go, and if you get cocky, say by running to the store in leggings and a t-shirt, it will immediately correct you. One comment from an older video always stuck with me. A guy said, "It was so cold at Wainwright one time, my thermostat just stopped working. It gave up." For context, Wainwright is an army post near Fairbanks, in case you were wondering how serious that statement is. Now for the numbers. Alaska's average winter temperature across the state is about 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, that's just an average. Head farther north and things get much colder, much faster. The lowest temperature ever recorded wasn't just extreme, it was historic. Minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit, measured at Prospect Creek Camp on January 23, 1971. That remains the coldest temperature ever recorded anywhere in the United States. And that's today's video. Hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something along the way. Go have a great day, take care of yourselves, and, most importantly, be nice to each other.